By the mayor, I need a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence. Dr. Tisdale, you want to second it? Sure. Dr. Tisdale,
I can't wait to second that. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion carried. Mayor Council Workshop discussed the upcoming ordinance for Chapter 15 Administrative Recommendation regarding city employees' compensation and schedule. Mr. Leonard?
It was my intent originally to put this on today as a first reading of an ordinance change. The city attorney convinced me that it was maybe a little too much to swallow in one bite and that perhaps we ought to have at least a little short workshop to talk through it. The personnel section of our city ordinance, when you think about it, how important this is, people are our most important resource and our most expensive resource. People make up 80% of our budget every year. So that personnel section, which had been left fallow for many years, had a lot of errors in it, and we just felt like we needed to get it cleaned up. I provided to you, in addition to a copy of the ordinance with the strikeouts and additions, I also copied you with something I call an executive summary. And I think it would be helpful to go through, if you would put the ordinance to one side and just look at that executive summary. So the ordinance, which is about 8 pages long, is the ordinance as it reads today with strikeouts and changes. But let me explain what the changes are. And then I think if what I would suggest is the ones that you're okay with, we won't talk about them, and if they're the ones that you are, we can. One of the things we do is we're eliminating the use of an anniversary date for review of merit increases. That's in the current ordinance. We're striking that out. We don't do anything by anniversary date anymore. If you talk to the human resources people, the senior of which is sitting here with me, you'll learn. She would tell you that it's way too complicated to do 640 anniversary dates, and keep track of when each person's anniversary date. It's always easier to just do a payroll change once a year for everybody, or however you do it, but not do it by anniversary date. So we've taken out use of anniversary dates. That's just an elimination of that language. We established new criteria for employee salary increases, or what we call in the ordinance performance increases. And I would say, even though we say performance, it's really acceptable performance increases. I added I put at your desk a few minutes ago an example of the performance review that every single employee of the city filled out this year, or had one filled out on. We knew where we were driving to. We knew that if we were going to do a citywide pay change, that we needed to be able to know who was an acceptable performer, because the criteria we have in the ordinance today says there are 4 criteria for somebody to receive a performance increase. One is availability of funds, and I'll come back to that. Number 2 is an acceptable performance review. Number 3 is a recommendation by the department director, and number 4 is approval by the mayor. Those are the 4 criteria for us to recommend somebody for a performance increase. Now, availability of funds, and I shared with you also, if you have it there, if not, I'll just summarize it, an email that we sent to all the council members during the budget preparation when we talked about would there be a pay increase. And it basically says that the mayor and I discussed how we do pay increases, and it's all over the map. Even in this administration, we've done percentage increases. In previous years, we did lump sum increases. We've done percentage increases where it was 2, 3, or 4, or 5% for different people. As a result, it's just all over the map. What we talked about, when do we know if we're like a business, if we're going to operate like a business? When do we know if we can afford to share with our employees our good fortune. In a municipal government, it's a little different, but the parallel would be in a private sector business. Generally, your audit is done in the first quarter of a new year, and at the end of that first quarter of a new year, you know whether you made any money or not as a company. Now, we don't make money in the city business. What we do have, the parallel to that, is ending fund balance or ending cash balance. That's the best parallel we have to a private sector business on whether it had a successful year or not. So what we thought was, and what the mayor and I spoke about when we sent this email, is that we were not going to recommend an increase at this time in the budget, because we didn't know at that point had we made any money in that fiscal year yet. It wasn't over yet. So when do we know? We know when the audit is released, or at least when we have a draft audit, which will be any day now, whether or not that we had an ending fund balance or ending cash balance that it exceeded the year before, and therefore can we afford to do an increase. So and that is an unknown at this moment. It will be known sometime in the next couple of weeks whether what that audit says. So when we talk about availability of funds for an increase, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about in the spring of a year, after the audit comes out, that we look and see, did we do better last year than the year before? Did we have an acceptable fund balance, and can we afford to make a pay increase? And I'll come back to the pay increase again, but that's one of the bullet points, is that we establish these 4 criteria for any kind of performance increase. Another bullet point is that we eliminated all the obsolete 1980s language on salary for police and fire. There is language in the ordinance today in section 15-1-10. There's one whole half a page that has no merit at all today. It goes back to 1985 and 1986 language having to do with police and fire salaries, which are no longer relevant and just need to be stricken from the ordinance. We eliminate any reference to a merit council. There is no such thing as a merit council. I don't know when we ever had a merit council. We don't have a merit council, and we're striking that language out of the ordinance. Longevity pay is very controversial to a lot of employees, as you will know better than me, because I'm newer than all of you in the city here. We had longevity pay for many years, and the previous administration in 2009 eliminated or capped longevity pay. What we're hoping to do in this write-up, cleanup of the ordinance, is to recognize that happened. If you read the ordinance today, it appears that we still do longevity pay, but in fact that was capped in 2009. And so what we're doing is we're trying to recognize the fact that was capped, and so that the ordinance does reflect the exact condition today. Now, the council may or may not have an issue with longevity pay and whether we want to do it again or not do it again or what. Councilman Lawrence and I had a long conversation last night, and I pointed out if the council wanted to do something about longevity pay, the time to do it was when we did the next budget year. So what we're doing in this ordinance right now is we're simply making the ordinance read so it reflects the condition today, with the longevity pay capped as of 2009. Another thing we've done is there is old language about medical leave without pay. We don't need that anymore because we now have FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, which is federal law, and all we have to do is refer to FMLA, and then our ordinance is in accordance with federal law. Those are all really just elimination, cleanup of this very busy ordinance. The first bullet, going back to the top, and the most controversial one, has to do with the compensation schedule. If you've ever seen the compensation schedule, it's about a yard wide. Everybody in the city is in a grade, and then within that grade, they're in one of 15 steps. Well, what we've done over time, because we've given people different kinds of pay increases, whether they be lump sum or percentage or different percentages, is that nobody's in a step anymore. They're all over the place. So the compensation schedule as it's written is really not very useful to us. And what we're proposing is that the compensation schedule, that every grade have a beginning salary. So if you're a laborer, your beginning salary is $11.55 an hour or whatever. If you're a truck driver, it's maybe $14.45 an hour. Whatever that starting position is, when we hire a new person into that grade, that is the starting position. And the only exception to that is if somebody comes in that's highly qualified, the mayor would be allowed, and the directors would be allowed to recommend going up 10% off that base salary and no more than 10% as a starting point. So if we hired a new truck driver and he happened to be a super duper truck driver with a lot of experience, so I'm just making up, that we could, instead of giving him $14.27, we could give him $15.10 because we could go up 10%, no more than 10%. If somebody came in that was not qualified, but we wanted to hire them, we could actually go down up to 5%. And they could start up to 5% below the actual starting point. That's the starting point. The only other thing in the compensation schedule, as we would redo it, is there would be an ending point. It would be an ending point that the top amount that you make in a certain grade as a truck driver, as a maintenance mechanic, as a carpenter. So you've had a starting point, and then employees could have changes of salary over time, and eventually they get to the ending point, which is the maximum amount for a carpenter. And what happens then? What happens then is one of two things. They stay at that rate forever, or they are reclassified into a new job, a new grade. So maybe they became a woodcrafter instead of a carpenter, which would have a different starting point and a different ending point. This happens a good bit in the city with employees that have been here for a long time, where they're, if you will, promoted into a new grade. They're given a new grade, and they're given different responsibilities than before. So they're not being promoted for being here longer. They're being promoted because now they have new responsibilities. That's called a reclassification. So this is what we're proposing to do with the old compensation schedule. Starting point, ending point, and within each grade. Now, when does the council get involved in some of this? For one thing, if we create a new position, it goes to the Civil Service Commission. We can't just create a truck driver 2. If we were to create a truck driver 2 who drives bigger trucks than the truck driver 1, I'm just making examples up. That is a new position. We have to write a new job description for it. It has to go to the city's Civil Service Commission. It has to be approved. Now, Jill, where do we go to council on something like that? We don't do that on it. So council doesn't get involved in a reclassification. But that would be something that you would see at budget time, because at budget time you see the entire compensation schedule, or should. You haven't lately. Right. So
I got a few questions back
okay,
to the...
good. So I've been doing all the talking. Let George turn,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, the compensation plan we had, I didn't think it was that bad. Probably wasn't perfect. My problem is when you start bringing in people and paying them way more money than anybody ever made in the city of Biloxi, that's what screwed up the compensation plan. You know, you have that coming in. You got people at economic development making 2 tons of money. You got the high and herd paying him $120,000 a year. Okay, then you sit there and you're beating up these people making $30,000 a year. But yet the mayor can take that, which he did, and turn it into 2 tons of money. And as far as availability of funds, I mean, you can kill that anytime you want. We spend too much money now. Mm-hmm. So that you could always say we don't have any money, you know, because we spent out too much money. We don't have any fund balance. A fund balance is easy to mess it up. It could be $3 million to $10 million. But my problem with the compensation plan is We can't sit and pass this thing here, and then y'all go hire somebody for $150,000 a year, and we have no say-so. That's the problem I have with this compensation plan, and
Well,
I can't stop the mayor from doing that.
you see, you see that, as Joe pointed out, you see the department budgets, when they come to you during the budget time. One of the exhibits shows every single grade and every employee and what their salary is. So that comes to you once a year. Anytime, now, you talk about some of the high-end expensive jobs. Remember, those directors, you have to approve every one of those directors, just like you have to approve the salary of the council clerks.
I understand that, Mike, but I mean, we had to up the directors because we hired these people that made so much money that they didn't have a level for them. And that affected the directors. And you got the fire police, they've been here 30-something years, and you hire somebody off the street and they're making $30,000 more than them. Well, I mean, everybody realizes that and they sees that. You know, I mean, that's that hard. This is nothing new. You've heard this before. I mean, it's come from a lot of other people, not just me. And that's what the problem. We have a lot of employees that's been there 20, 25 years, making $35,000, $40,000, $45,000 a year, and we're going to sit there and streamline and make sure we take care of them. Don't give them anything that they don't deserve. You know.
Wait, let me respond just a little bit regarding different salaries for different skills and different productivity. I think that's what we're trying to get to. But, you know, we're trying to be comparable. That's what we did with regard to our directors. And we're trying to be comparable when it comes to, you mentioned some salaries at, program management. I mean, we're trying to do what's comparable to other cities and keep the opportunity to be able to employ the city of Biloxi within a reasonable approach. So, I didn't want to sit back in the back but let me express that. Everything we do, we're trying to make sure that we're comparable to other cities, and that's why I think we've been very successful in what we've done, with regard to benefits, and to work for the city of Biloxi should be something people look forward to. So this is an effort to actually define a path. Can you correct me if I'm wrong?
Yep.
And actually, see what you can be doing and what steps you can jump without having, grade such and such, step 25 and a half, something like that. So, I mean, you're trying to streamline this, I think is what we're trying to do.
This ordinance lists 4 categories of people that the council has to approve their salary. The mayor is one, the city council is one, the council clerks is one, and the directors. All of those have to come individually by name, by salary, to the council. The rest is all just in the budget. So when you're approving the budget for the Public Works Department, you're going to see what everybody makes. But we're not asking at that point for you to approve what some carpenter makes or some truck driver makes. You're approving the department budget, period, as it's listed.
And we do that, Mike. I mean, we know that y'all brought all the directors, you brought the money, you jacked up their salaries. Okay, fine, we voted that. You either vote for it or vote against it. We hadn't got to the mayor or the council,
I got to
so we
take
won't
issue
do
with
that
jacked
until.
up. You made it
No,
comparable with other directors around this coast. So don't, it's 10 people that you're talking to, but it's actually to attract and keep directors who have been here 10s and 20s and 30s years. You got to be competitive. Now, we talked about this on how you award people for being productive. And I think this is a fair explanation of how you're going to step through your career at the city of Biloxi. And using jacked up, it ain't jacked up, it's ketchup.
Well, that's your opinion.
I'm not griping at you.
That's your opinion, that's okay.
And the
But I
purpose of our workshop, this is not a first reading, obviously.
Yeah,
What we're hoping to do is get feedback from you individually today or after today on anything that you believe we need to do differently with this ordinance. And then it'll come to you as a first reading and eventually a second reading. By the time it comes to you as a second reading, it'll also come to you with a consent agreement on a pay increase. But we're not going to put that on the table until we can get the ordinance cleaned up. So it would be late April, early May, by the time we receive the audit, that we would come to you with a recommendation for a citywide pay increase. So that's 2 or 3 weeks away. Right now, we're still trying to clean this ordinance up. I think most of it is just boilerplate cleanup, and I don't think, I would just guess that you probably don't have problems with most of it, but if there are issues that you have a problem with, we'd like to hear about it so we can get it cleaned up before the first reading.
Well, May I ask a question? Does this cover every city employee? Does this encompass every single city employee in every single department?
Yes, it covers every employee that's covered in the civil service, yes.
All right, which employees are not covered by?
The mayor, the directors, the city council, the council clerks.
That's it.
That's it. Everybody else is civil service.
is
The civil
covered.
service. Correct.
So if somebody falls in the category of a
Well,
rate increase or a classification increase, we're going to cover it with this new ordinance.
Correct.
I would like to explain the old compensation schedule many years ago, Lucy knows, she was here back then. We used to have 2.5% between each step, okay? And of course, like Mike explained, over the years, because of the type of increases the employees that y'all ran with us, y'all gave dollar amounts, you did
Percentage, yeah.
percentage based on your service. It screwed it no longer had the workings that it was meant to have. And part of the changes, because years ago I came to y'all and wanted the same thing, and it was voted down. Because y'all were so afraid that we would be able to just start anybody wherever we wanted. Well, the ordinance states that we can bring someone in at 2 additional steps. Well, 2 additional steps at one time meant one thing, now it can be all over the page. So we changed it to a percentage, so that we can't go and say, oh, I'm gonna start someone at the end of the comp. It can only go up 10% from the beginning salary. So we put some safeguards in there so that, just like before, when we had the 2.5%, it was in there then. So we still are held accountable as an administration, what we can do and what we can't do.
So the mayor's got a cousin he wants to hire. Let's. And it's. Whoa. No, I was, and he wants to hire this guy into a job that pays $10 an hour. He can actually go to $10 and $11 an hour, but not to $11.50, because 10%. That's the rule. Can't bring anybody in to a certain grade, whatever that grade is, for more than the base of salary plus 10%.
I go back to my original thing. You talking about people you hiring into this program to work for the city. My problem when you hire somebody and pay them $120,000 and you can't stop them from doing that, and there's no grade for them. There ain't no piece of paper, there ain't nothing on that paper you can stop that from doing. So you got certain things. You're hiring Joe Blow for $42,000. That's all he's going to get. The most you get is $4,000 more. But yet you can turn around and hire somebody and give them $120,000, not in anybody plan. And that's the problem we had, and that was some of the feedback we got from the last thing where we did that. That we hired people and paid them too much money when nobody in the city of Biloxi ever was hired in and made that kind of money. Even with degrees, engineers, everybody was not hired and give that kind of money. And that was the biggest gripe I still listen to.
Well, if you're talking
what you're
directors, you
changing-
approved them all. Your
Do what?
directors, you approve.
No.
Anybody
We
that's
ain't
not
talking
civil
about
service,
directors.
you have to approve.
Come on, get off directors. Directors have been here. We've been dealing with them, with their salary. Not talking about them. I'm talking about people they brought in had nothing to do with anything. They wasn't directors. And that's the problem I always hear on the street. Why'd you give people so much money? They had nothing to do with it. We voted for directors, period. We voted for we didn't even change the mayor's salary. We ain't changed our salary. So I'm just saying, we sitting there and controlling the people working for the city in the $40,000, $50,000 range, the policemen, the firemen, the truck drivers, the ditch dealer, stuff like that. But then you still have that other problem. That's my outside problem.
What we're talking about is an ordinance change now. If there's something you think needs to be in the ordinance that would control that?
No, as I said, I can't control the mayor when he does that. That's what he does. I can't stop that.
Yeah.
But if he brought him in as a director or anybody, then we could either vote on the salary or not vote on it. But that's strictly it. I can't stop them from doing it yet. That's what I'm saying. That's why I have a problem with the balance. At the end of the year, you got to have 8 million, 10 million, where you want to have before you give raises. That's too easy to change. Numbers are easy to change. You make it good, bad, whatever you want to do.
Your legislative branch approves the budget. The administration manages the budget and presents the
I understand that.
So
But your numbers are brought to, but you bring the numbers to us.
we
Yeah, I mean, you bring the numbers to us, and you've done a good job. We got more information the last few years than we ever got ever, since I've been here. I'm just saying, so, but you're gonna bring the numbers to us. I don't bring numbers to you. You bring them to me, and then I gotta either prove them or disapprove them. You know?
Yeah, this last year, we had a whole series of budget workshops. I think they were very useful because we actually drilled down. It wasn't like we just jammed it, in and said, this is the budget. We had workshops, and we had the department workshop where we opened up every department budget, showed you what all the positions were and what they made. So you really have the chance to interact with us during the budget process.
You've done that, and I mean,
It's not hard, it's not, our way or the highway kind of thing.
I'm just like Peter, and when I got the money from the county, and they've done a good job. I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, but the numbers are brought to us. And then we have to make sure we prove the numbers right and wrong. That's all, I'm just telling you, I know how it works. Been here long enough to learn all that. And I know the problem with when you're dealing with the employees themselves, and I don't know who writes these things up, and if somebody's doing a bad job, do we fire them? What do you do with them?
Every employee in the city got a write-up this year.
Okay.
Every single one. And they were done by their supervisors and signed by the department heads. And if it was an administrative department, I signed them. So everybody got a write-up. Not all of them were good.
Now when you got 600-something employees, I don't doubt you got 10% of them not doing any good. So what do? You just cut their salary, or you just fire them? What does it take to get rid of somebody? Terminate them?
Well, we don't cut salaries.
You do, as you said in here about decreases.
You do if there's a promotion. If somebody's not receiving an acceptable performance, I would hope for progressive discipline, they would start with counseling, warnings, reprimands, through disciplinary action. That's how you have to get rid of the employee.
And the civil service protects.
Yeah, yeah.
process.
Dr. Tisdale have something to say, but my biggest worry is what I'm hearing on this, the human factor. I'm very apprehensive about the human factor, and I've been in many jobs before, and I've seen the errors that can have in that human area. So I'm real apprehensive about that. I just have to put that up front.
I understand that. Yeah.
No, as far as the supervisors making the evaluations.
Well, we have an ordinance today. It's got a lot of errors in it. What we're trying to do is clean it up. I think a lot of protections are there, but you're right. I mean, human beings are human beings, and people play favorites, and that's just the nature of our business, of any business. We just have to, as managers, we have to avoid, keep these things tamped down.
Right, and who's going to look out for the little guy? And that's the biggest question that I have. Who's going to look out for
Civil
him?
service, right?
Well,
Resources and civil service, trust me, I come to my office quite often,
Yeah,
and I investigate if there was a complaint, if something's happened, ask me.
yeah. Dr. Tisdale?
Dr. Tisdale.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments, observations, and then some suggestions. First of all, I applaud the fact that there is some sort of appraisal instrument, because since we've been on the council, it's only been police and fire, but at least there's some feedback. And just from what I've heard, if I'm the little man, the employee, and I have heartburn, there's a process for grievance, is there not? Okay, and then there's civil service for protection. And what I would tell you, because I used to hear this in my previous career, it's impossible to fire people. It's not. All you have to do is sit down, be honest, document it, all right, increase the consequences, and at some point you're up for termination. You come before the Civil Service Commission. If you've done your job, the Civil Service Commission is going to say this employee got a fair shake. That's it. That's the way it works. Okay?
You would probably be surprised to see how many discipline actions there have been taken. I see them all there, since most of them get involved.
Right, and I attend the Civil Service Commission meetings, and every once in a while, they ask good questions. Why do we still have this employee? And they're asking, because I'm thinking some of those on the commission would say, man, this would have driven me nuts. I'd have gotten rid of them months ago. But anyway, that's a different story. But I appreciate the appraisal form. the compensations schedule. It is out of whack because over time, as has been pointed out, due to various methods of increasing salary, that and the fact that we have an outlier or two on the employee side of this, okay? We're not mentioning names, but there's an outlier there in terms of salary for an employee, and it was a new position. And at the time, at budget time, the council approved that salary for that individual, but it was not on, it was not placed on the compensation schedule at that time by the Civil Service Commission, because it was a new position, and it was off the charts, relatively speaking. But I think the consensus of the council, as I recall, was that most of us thought we've got a new mayor. If this is a team he's got to have, we want to give him the team he needs, since he's the chief executive and he was elected by the people of Biloxi. As I recall, that was the rationale. But still, it's an outlier, and when you're trying to justify, well, but really we should have had the Civil Service Commission approve that. The next, the compensation schedule with the description of the position and everything. As I recall, Peter, you may have to check this, I think there's an ordinance that says the compensation schedule has to be adopted annually, but it doesn't say when.
And it really ought to be during budget time.
It should be.
Hasn't been.
Exactly. It should be during budget time, and I think historically, just in asking a few questions, historically, the only time the compensation schedule in the past may have come up previously was if there was a change in that compensation schedule. If there wasn't, I think it was year 3 before I ever saw a compensation schedule. I thought, what is this? So it's supposed to be approved annually, whether there are any changes or not, but that allows the Civil Service Commission, if there are new positions or positions that have to be recalibrated or whatever, that allows time to follow the process, go to the Civil Service Commission, have them bless it, then it comes to us, we review it, we can live with it, great. If not, we vote it down, say go back to the drawing board or whatever. And I would suggest that this compensation schedule be adopted as a separate item, but at the same time, as you mentioned, Mr. Leonard, that the budget is adopted, so everybody's on board and everything's in sync. I'm curious, what about pay bumps? Let's say we're all employees, we all get a 2% raise, terrific. And Peter takes his law clerk 6 months later and says, Law Clerk Glavin is just doing an outstanding job. I want to give him a $500 a year bump. So I think so he makes a suggestion, fills out a form. I think Peter signs it, Mike would sign it, goes to the mayor. If he says, Law Clerk Glavin just does an outstanding job, boom, he signs it. So in addition to the 2%, he's now got a $500 raise, worth every penny, as attested to by everybody who signed off. But I've asked each year and have never gotten an answer. How many of those people do we have? Because they are different. If Mr. Glavin goes from law clerk to a new position, that's something different. But if he stays in the same position and gets a pay bump, those are the folks I'm interested in, and I would like to see a summary report of those types of employees. I'm not talking about police and fire because they're pretty much
They're locked in. They've got automatic.
they're locked in. But everybody else, and I think this goes to Felix's concern, and I remember David Fayard had one with these merit councils, and that was, suppose Mr. Abide every year after that, every year he wants a $500 pay bump for law clerk.
Did you ask if you could touch me?
You're doing good.
I'd like to smell your hair. Anyway, I wish I could smell my hair. But what I'm getting at is I would like, because we have no idea, as George pointed out, anybody who gets some sort of raise, not an annual thing, and I like the idea of doing away with the anniversary dates and do it at a set time when we do the budget. That only makes sense. But also to see who's getting pay bumps that I would say are, not arbitrary, but I would say discretionary, that if all their supervisors sign off. How many of those folks do we have? If Mr. Glavin's getting that extra $500,
It's not as many as you think.
no,
In
it's,
most cases, these are people that are being reclassified. So, for example, somebody in Public Works that's a utility crewman, and now it becomes an equipment operator.
right, different skill set, I understand that. They're basically moving to a slightly or significantly different position, but for those that aren't, and I'm sure there may only be a handful,
The reason why you won't see a laborer or a janitor or somebody that's in a position of which there are many get a bump like that, because it's a slippery slope. Everybody gets a bump, and everybody wants a bump. I mean, so like a harbor master,
Well-
you give one harbor master an increase, and all the rest of them.
You know,
So you have to do it once a year.
No, I understand all of that, and I've been now in city government long enough to know that if somebody sneezes in this department, everybody's got pneumonia a week later, okay? But having said that, then every supervisor ought to be able to, and it's really hard to be honest with folks and say, well, let me tell you, the reason, I can't touch him anymore, the reason he got a pay bump is, let me tell you, he's salaried, he stays late, he comes into work early. Whenever there's a glitch or something, he's the first one to volunteer. You, on the other hand, don't demonstrate much initiative. I mean, and I would also think that with these forms, these appraisal forms, that supervisors or department heads would take advantage to note either a grow, hey, here's what you need to improve, or a glow statement, for lack of a better term. Let me tell you, appreciate the job you've done, yada, yada, yada. But over a series of time, if you looked at those appraisals or evaluations, then you ought to be able very simply to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Demi, I can't give you a pay raise. You don't measure up like this guy does. You want to know what he does? Watch him. I mean, I get it, but and it's tough to be honest, but that's what you have to do.
Councilman Guys hit on one point, and that is, we'll wring our hands over being fair, and there being sometimes, pet rocks in an organization for various reasons, whether they be related or whether they just be really good workers. But we can't legislate that out of existence. That's just human nature.
But that's why you sign off on these, and that's why the mayor signs off. Y'all,
I'll get a blue sheet, I call it a blue sheet, and somebody wants to promote a guy, give him some more money. I say, he needs some more money. I said, but we're gonna give everybody else some more money too?
right? No, I get that, but when you have employees, for example, who don't show up on time, who are continually late, these kinds of things, well, let me tell you why I'm making a recommendation that Mr. Leonard and the mayor have to approve to cut your salary 2%. Here's why. I mean, all you have to do is just be honest with your employees.
And relate productivity to the whole game. 'Cause
Right.
The more productive folks, the easier
Right.
it is for you to
Well-
do your job. And there's also some ranges that would prevent that.
But not only are you productive, but I
Or
want
non-productive.
somebody who's not going to come in with an attitude and sour the department or screw up the department. I mean, that's a little harder, other than anecdotally noting these instances or narrowing it down. And the fact of the matter is, what employees say is, well, prove that I said that or prove that I did that. Well, I don't have proof. I'm just making a note for the file, and if this happens frequently enough, I got to assume that there's something to this. But it just takes time. So anyway, I'm trying to make your case for you, first of all. And the second thing is that I would like some sort of summary report, which could be adopted or presented by the administration after you get the rough draft of the audit, so you know whether or not you can afford to offer a salary increase. And about the same time we adopt the compensation schedule and the budget, just have some sort of summary report for those folks who got pay bumps. And maybe my guess is there's probably less than 10. I'm guessing, I have no idea, but there'll be a handful, and some of them, I would assume all of them are justified, since y'all have to sign off on them. So I've said my piece.
Because we haven't asked you for permission to do the pay bump yet, that is, the commission is really asking you for approval of the funding as the legislators in this room. just FYI, if we do this in May, there's 11 pay periods left. It would be, 2% would be a $289,000 cost for the fiscal year.
That's all in, that's not just our
That's-
salaries, the wages,
that's
benefits and everything.
salary and benefits, so.
But
289, so, but 12 months would be about what, 315?
But a 26 pay period, in other words, what we'd be
Okay.
putting in the next year's budget.
Right.
Would be about 650.
But you know,
1%, every 1%'s about 300,000.
and that 1% goes on forever. So it's not just 1% one year, it doesn't come up way. I mean, literally, that's the whole composite.
Keep in mind that we're doing in the fourth quarter of this year is that we're increasing by 2% the city's participation in all employees' PERS. So we have a 2% increase in the contribution that we have to make to every employee's PERS, so 15 to 17%. That is happening this year.
The amount or the percentage for benefits is, what do we figure now, roughly 40%?
Around 40%.
Okay, so in addition to their salary, so if I've got a,
That was part of the three, that this was the 289 would be salary and benefits.
right, okay.
In the payroll,
Asking you for that, Greg. The only thing, to be clear, the only thing we're asking you for is to give us some feedback today, if you have any interest in doing so, if you've got a problem with anything in this, so that we can give you a clean first reading on this ordinance at the next meeting.
Mike, isn't the payroll 40 million? Isn't the payroll 40 million? 1% would be 400,000. Where are you getting 289 from?
From this.
1%, yeah, but I mean, the payroll is 40 million,
11 pay periods,
huh?
11 out of 26 pay periods.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, so you still, it doesn't matter how you pay it. If you paid it twice, you're gonna take 400,000 for every 1%. You're gonna need 800,000 for 2%. Right.
Yeah, 650
So it's all, I mean, you need 800,000.
half a year.
Every percent is 400,000.
Do it in May, and, that's right.
I'm just saying, so I mean, you gotta, if you're gonna do the number, do them right, make sure,
Don't bump for FY '20, still gonna cost you
Doesn't have the
over
directors.
yeah.
650.
Yeah, understand, this doesn't include the directors, doesn't include the city council, doesn't include the mayor. It includes all of the.
Well, I guess we're down to 10 million then.
I think, we can work out those details with whatever the figure is. Let me tell you how it kind of related to productivity. When I was managing my company and doing my things, one measurement of ongoing revenue was the support money revenues that and it's a little bit like the fund balance. Look at the fund balance. We would take 20% of the ongoing support services for the customer base that I built up and distribute it to the employees every year. So, how good the company does, that's how much that percentage comes back. So I think Mike was looking at, the performance of the city with regard to cash reserves or cash balances as well as fund balances. So, I mean, not that we could do that, because, you may not get that hit next year if support revenues go down. But, I mean, we have a different, sort of metrics that we're looking at, and I think it's based on year after year. We can support that figure you get year after year after year. So not only be for 20, it'll be for 21 and for 22 too, so we need to sustain that.
Anyway, we've kept you a long time today. At the advice of my city attorney, rather than just dropping this on you as a first reading, I thought it would be
Appreciate
good to try and run through some of this. If you have any issues you want us to work on this language, I'll either meet with you individually, or you can email me or call me or whatever, and I can tweak it up. And then we'd like to give you this ordinance as a first reading at your next meeting.
The
It'll just be a
longevity.
first reading, and there will not be a vote. And we will not come to you about the pay raise until we see the audit.
I said on the longevity, you'd rather talk about that at the budget time?
What I recommended to you last night, Councilman, is that if you want to get back into longevity pay, that you, at the time we put our budget together for the next year, that you propose that, maybe ask us to go do some research and find out what it would cost. And then that would be an issue to take up during the budget.
Well, I always thought that was a good hiring too, what they pay people like the longevity, people that stay a long time. Again, if you want to cap it at 20, 25 years, I mean, you can look at those options. I think that's another thing. You know, when people started coming to work for the city of Biloxi, they had great insurance. That everything in Biloxi was way better than anybody else. And they had longevity. They had good service, you know, working for the city of Biloxi. And we hired a lot of good people. And, you know, he even said it, where's he at? Back there, hiding back there, the mayor. They have quality people. You need to offer them a lot of good things. Even though money might be lower in some cases, which I doubt if anybody pays more than we pay to anybody on the coast. So I don't know why we don't have to catch up to anybody. Most people are trying to catch up to us. But I just think the longevity is a good tool for hiring people. They have qualified people that think they can have that extra. It's like $15 a month, $180 a year, you know, whatever. So I just think that's a good hiring tool. And yeah, I'd like to see you look at that and see the total expense it would cost if we put that back into play. Appreciate that.
Council President, I don't have anything more unless you have something for us.
Motion recess, yeah, okay.
All right.
Motion recess, got, special meeting. Okay, I got a motion moved by Mr. Deming, second by Mr. Glavin. Any questions? Call for the question, all in favor? 7-0. Almost forgot.